Sweet. I'm ready when you guys are.
Okay, give it about 10 seconds and we'll be good.
So I just noticed this light behind me.
Oh, great.
It's like perfectly outlining. Yeah.
Yeah, that is from my light fixture. I'm not doing that.
It's weird.
You're
Yeah,
glowing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that's very like Virgin Mary on a piece of toast right there.
It's good.
I'm not doing that. It's weird.
Guess when that sound clip is going to show up.
Hey, Mike, do you have your Mycosaurus Jurassic Park sticker thing online, like as an image that I could snag from somewhere?
No.
Or whatever logo you like to put on there. Not that a lot of people watch this, but you know, they
Stand by.
Okay.
Stand by.
You never know.
Let's see what I got in the old Google Drive. I might have something I can pull out here.
Oh, this chair.
Donovan, your slurm sign looks great, by the way. Yeah, it's perfect. It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah, I almost want to like sit right here.
Yeah, no, you gotta off-center it a little bit. You gotta showcase that. All right, Wes. I think I.
Yeah, I posted my Instructable for it this morning. I was like, oh man, I hope this is received well, because the video isn't being received very well. So I was hoping the Instructable for it would boost it a little bit. But people that go on Instructables don't watch my videos.
I know. I was listening to you say that earlier, and we can actually talk about that too. I've got a long history with Instructables. Wes,
Yeah.
what's your email address? Just Wes Swain.
Wes.swain@gmail is a good one.
Okay, let's see if this works. I'm gonna just share this with you directly. It's the if I could type, that'd be pretty cool. Let's see if I can do that again. All right, just send that to you. We'll see if that works. It's an Illustrator file, so you might have to chew through a couple steps to get it. But I don't. Unfortunately, I don't have Illustrator on my shop computer, so I can't convert that for you.
Mike, what's your official title at for work?
It's a good question.
Or basically, how would you like us to kind of introduce you and say who you are? Or maybe we'll just let you do it.
Yeah, sure, great.
Okay.
I don't even know. I don't even wear a lot of hats, so I don't even know what my title is. So, yeah, prototype designer, educator.
I just made up a stupid one and it kind of stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I battle with that all the time. I ask my wife, I'm like, what do you think I do? How would you describe, what I do? Maybe you guys have this conversation as well, because
I should. That would be fun.
the word maker, I feel like in our circle is well received and people understand that vernacular. But if you talk outside that, like let's say my wife's a teacher, she's got a lot of teacher friends, they might not understand what that is. Like obviously teaching has a lot of overlap with that, but an accountant might not know what that is. So you say you're a maker, like is that the same thing as a builder? Is that the same thing as an inventor? Is that the same thing as fill in the gap? So, I think it's a tough thing to sort of title yourself as, and whatever that word is, that's what I do with Autodesk, if that makes sense.
I think prototype designer and educator is pretty good.
I feel like that's the wide enough umbrella, and if you're really interested in what I'm doing, we can get really granular and talk a little more about it.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. All right, we can go ahead and start. I didn't get that file, but it's fine. I'm not worried about it.
What episode number are we on?
141.
Are you sure you can't hear that hedgehog? Which is a really silly
Is that code for something?
No, I'm upstairs and I'm not down in the office, and the hedgehog is in the next room and he's running on the wheel.
I didn't know they made noise.
Okay, good.
Please tell me he has like red shoes on.
It gets lippy.
I remember the first time I saw a hedgehog. I had never seen a hedgehog before, and I was over at a friend's house when I was in high school, and we were playing video games, and all of a sudden this thing like crawls up next to me. I'm like, what is that? What is that? And the thing crawls up on my lap and like flops over onto its belly, and I'm like, dude, what is this thing? It's like a hedgehog, and I'm like, this is not what I expected a hedgehog to look like.
Firstly, it's not blue. Let's just talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. It's like, hey, it wants you to rub its belly. I was like, oh, you got such a soft belly. It's like, yeah, but just don't pet it backwards. Yeah, okay.
Is that a thing, really?
I don't know.
'cause the
Spikes lay
bristles-
one way.
Oh,
one way.
right.
Yeah.
Not the
Oh, but
belly.
his belly, yeah, the belly's soft.
Yeah, going one direction, like, it doesn't feel too bad. It's just like overly gelled hair is the
It's
best
like a
example.
hairbrush. It's like you're
Yeah.
you're trying to pet a
But
hairbrush.
if you do it backwards, you're like, ah! It's pretty prickly. Yeah.
Cool. Ready when you guys are.
I'm ready.
Okay, let's do it. If you're looking to one up your week, you're in the right place. I'm Sean.
I'm Josh.
I'm Donovan.
I'm Wes.
Oh, and I'm Mike.
Yeah, see, we sprung that on you.
Yeah, it's fine. And you're listening to the Making Geeks podcast, the podcast for makers, dads, and geeks. This is episode 141. And you might have heard that other voice on air today, and you're listening to Mike Warren, prototype designer and educator from
Autodesk.
Autodesk.
That's right. Formerly from Instructables. I got moved teams. Instructables got acquired, and I moved teams into the bigger mothership of Autodesk.
Very cool. So, how guys are doing this week?
We're doing good.
Busy.
Busy?
Yeah. 3D printing a lot of stuff.
Is that for the order you talked about last week?
Yeah, it's even more than it was last week. So I got 200 3D printed objects that look like this. Random, like,
About the size of a shoe.
it's about the size of
Is that for
a
the
small
trucker?
shoe. Yeah, it's a mount for the back. It's a mount for an electronics box that goes on the back of a tablet mount in a vehicle for the Wyoming Department of Transportation. So I got to order 200 of those. That I've got
I
to.
like how in this
Yeah.
world that we're in, we
from
can
North
say
Carolina.
the most bizarre sentences like that,
Yeah.
and everybody's like, "Oh yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, sure.
That seems completely
The
fine."
guy from North Carolina that
He
you know.
hangs out in his basement is totally making tablet mounts for the back of a car for the Wyoming Department of Transportation.
right out of ABS, so it survives the heat and cold of Wyoming environments. Like, sure, yeah, it's normal.
What was the thinking of 3D printing all of them instead of like making a cast? Or injection molding, I guess, if you really want to go that far down. But
Cheap
He had
as
what
far
he
as the
had.
injection molding part of it goes.
well, it's a little.
I thought about the cast thing, but it would have taken me longer to. Well, it wasn't easily castable in one piece. From looking at it, it has like a lot of undercuts and stuff, and it just seemed simpler at first. So I'll let you know afterwards how simple it ended up being. I think I found a discounted. I need to find a good source of material of filament, and Amazon is not as cheap as I wanted. I need ABS for 2 different thicknesses. So I have two different printers that one uses 1.75 millimeter, the other one uses 3. Of course, it has to be different. And so I'm actually using Hatchbox, which prints really well on my machines. And I found that if you go to their website, you can get like volume discounts there. So if you get orders of at least 10% or more, it's 20% off the total cost, which is huge when you're buying enough material to make 200 of these things. I can get about 6 out of a roll, a 1 kilogram spool. So that's quite a lot of filament that I'm going to be ordering in the next couple months.
Look at IC3D. They have
Yeah.
a 5 kilogram spool. I know they have PTG. I don't know
That's
if
a
they
good
have,
idea.
I'm sure they have ABS, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like half an oil drum. It's pretty big.
Yes.
It'll take you a little while.
I'll have to get like a sample one just to see how it prints because I got this one dialed in pretty well. But yeah, that's a good idea too. I'll have to look into that. What have you guys been up to?
Donovan, how's your first day of freedom?
My first day of freedom.
First week. How's your first week? Sorry, not day.
Well, no, I guess you can call today my first day of freedom. I went to go have an interview with a headhunter who is going to find a job for me, and so I can't apply for jobs because that's his job. Even though I did apply for a job at Google and I'm going to have an interview for that, so we'll see how that goes. But so today I didn't have to like update my resume or look for jobs or anything like that. So I spent the entire day in the shop, and
Nice.
I realized that
Nice.
uninterrupted I can complete a project a day because I almost got my my Jackman-sized Jimmy DiResta postcard almost done. So that'll be done tomorrow. The video will be out for it Friday. I'm doing a baby gate and storage racks and probably like 3 other projects in the next week. So
Stay
if I
busy.
could get a catalog of like
Yeah.
videos done now, like I can like have time to, I don't know, work on other stuff, or I don't know. We'll see.
I am working on several animations for our Retrofest Festival that happens next Friday, which is the showcase of all the performing arts from the high school that I work for. And my students are almost done with theirs, and it's pretty impressive what they've been able to do in a couple of weeks, with some of them almost never animating before. One of them is the theme of the Retrofest is the 90s, so any animation like referencing the 90s.
Huh.
So I have 2 students working on an animation where Forrest Gump is going to be running past, like a bunch of different sets from the 90s, Truman Show, Lion King, Toy Story, whatever it is.
That's a
I
good
have somebody
idea.
else.
That part in Braveheart where he smashes that guy's face with a mace. You remember that?
I think they left that one out.
That's true.
I'm
was
sure
a
you
student,
would.
That's what I would do.
I have this one student who who's who did a digital painting of Will Smith as a Fresh Prince. She put like 15 hours into it. Pretty amazing. I'm doing one of the Iron Giant that I just started today, but that's actually pretty quick. That'll almost be done. And yeah, so most of my time will be dedicated to helping that get ready. I've been in auditions and judging, singing, and performing, and which is really kind of a weird spot for me to be because I've never been around the performing arts. So it's some uncharted territory here.
Are they singing and performing 90s stuff?
Yes, they are.
Oh,
Like some Paul Abdul and some Two Live Crew? If somebody do a Two Live Crew, they need to get a pass.
No, we had to say no to that one. More like Alanis Morissette, Nirvana, Santana. Yeah, some stuff like that.
oldies to them, right?
They were non-existent.
Right.
They weren't even born yet.
Right. Wow.
I know, it's kind of weird. So how about you, Mike?
Actually, here, Mike, why don't you tell us about it, man? You've got the floor. Tell us who you are and what you do, and then what you've been working on recently, so we
Sure.
can kind of get a gist of what it is that you are doing.
Yeah, all right. Come from the Instructables world. I've been working there for probably 7 years, and then before that, I early sign up on the site, and it was pretty cool to. This is like maybe 2005 to actually find a community of people that liked making stuff as well. And it sounds weird to say now, but 2005, I don't think I really knew anybody else like me that liked making stuff, and all my friends really weren't into the same kind of stuff. So to find an outlet of other people and in that day and age of the internet was actually pretty awesome. So I kind of took to it and somehow turned it into a career. And stuck with Instructables. They ended up getting acquired by Autodesk, which are best known probably for the AutoCAD CAD software, but in recent times, Fusion 360 is also one of their products, which is pretty cool. I fully dipped maker, love it. Authored a couple books, couple kids books. More recently, a side project I did. One of the advantages of being acquired by a really large company is that they have large budget for some pretty nice tools, and one of those tools is a water jet cutter. For those that don't know, it's 60,000 psi water stream that comes out of the size of a ballpoint pen, can cut 4 inches of solid steel, 6 inches of aluminum, cut anything, any sheet good is really what it's designed for. So CNC machine replicate very large cuts, very precise cuts as well. The kerf is very small on it. And so as part of my job, I got to use that machine, and it's fun, but it takes a long time to CNC cut stuff. So I got daydreaming of what other things you could stick inside a water jet that maybe you shouldn't, like toasters and blenders and vacuum cleaners and bowling balls and stuff like that. And so when the shop was closed, I started up a YouTube channel called Cut in Half, and I just filmed me cutting random stuff in half. And it was a couple years ago, and yeah, it did pretty well on the internet, and ended up coming out with a book, which is kind of a large format coffee table book. Lots of really cool pictures showing stuff inside of how stuff works. And as a fan of how it's made growing up, that's sort of what I styled the show after, and how I wanted the book to read as well. Very stripped down and let the piece sort of speak for itself. So in my day job, I work in the education team as Autodesk. So trying to get Fusion and Tinkercad and AutoCAD sort of in the hands of makers and students all over the world. It's a pretty fun job. There's no sales as part of it because everything's free, which is great. So I just get to talk about making stuff and how we can use our software to do it.
That still flabbergasts me, because when I was in college, I learned AutoCAD, and like how you had to do everything in 2D, and then we used Pro Engineering, and I was like, whoa, you can model stuff in 3D? That's awesome. And it was just like super crazy expensive software package. And then now, like, anybody can sign up and get Fusion, and you can do like the most simple little sketches. You can 3D print, you can CNC, you can test, you can do stress testing. It is amazing what this package can do for free.
It's pretty crazy.
It's bonkers.
And so actually on the Fusion 360 side, and I love Fusion 360, I use it all the time. My jam is actually Tinkercad. I use that way more than I use Fusion, mainly because it's browser based, which is awesome. So it runs on Chromebooks, on anything. But most of what I do when I 3D print are really quick prototypes, sort of test to see if something works, test some tolerance for something. Does this design make sense? And Tinkercad's great for just throwing together masses, subtracting some stuff, and then having that puked out on my print bed and be like, oh, okay, it actually works. Okay, then I'll throw it into Fusion and spend a little bit more time on it. But for half hour, like, it's basically napkin sketch prototyping, which I really like. But
that's interesting.
Fusion's a pretty big hammer to bring out, and it's a really powerful tool.
Well, Donovan's making giant eyeballs.
Here, yeah.
Because I am trying to learn Fusion, because I used to play on Tinkercad a lot.
Right.
And every time I open Fusion, I'm like, oh, I need a degree for this.
So
do some one-on-ones.
Classes on Fusion, which are pretty nice, because it sort of guides you in. If you've done any 2D design, it's sort of 2.5D, if that makes sense. So you're designing in 2D, but your material is the third dimension. So it's kind of a nice way to sort of dip your toes into 3D design using Fusion.
Yeah.
It's an interesting learning curve because my first experience with 3D was Maya.
Right.
Same.
I've been using Maya since 1997.
Okay.
But the last 2 years now, I'm more in the makerspace, so I'm more interested in designing, more like engineering type things. So that's where the Fusion comes in. It's an interesting transition.
And my brain still works in Maya space, so whenever I have to go into Fusion, I'm just like, oh, and I try to force myself to make like, okay, this next project, I'm gonna do it all in Fusion, and then like the back of my mind's like, you could do this faster in Maya, you could do this faster in Maya, and it's just like a constant argument with myself, and then either I'll just like completely toss it out the window and just like dive into Maya, or beat my head against the wall for an hour doing something that seems so simple. But
for anybody listening, Maya is also an Autodesk product, so we're still talking about the same.
We are same family.
But what's really frustrating is that it's not the same language, right? Like they don't speak.
Yeah.
And by that I mean like the interface, the commands.
Oh yeah.
Any of that back end stuff. Like that's. I think Adobe's probably the only company that has really nailed that
Oh,
effectively. But
except for their new update.
Josh has words
Yeah.
about that.
No, it just got the 2019 update to Illustrator, and it's silly little things like certain key commands that were the same in the 2018
Yeah,
are different in the
they changed it.
2019. And so
No
yeah,
reason to change.
it seems like real intuitive across the gamut of offerings. But like from one version to the next version, like let's change this thing for
That's not fair. You
I don't
can't change
understand
the
why.
shortcuts. That's not fair.
Yeah, and it's so weird because someone's like, "How do you make the thing bigger?" And you got to make I have to mimic the stupid claw hand. I'm like, you got to hit the buttons that correspond with this hand gesture, and that's what will get you. And now it doesn't work. Now that hand gesture doesn't work because they've changed it. Ugh.
Yeah, they've done that with Premiere too. So like my keyboard that's all decked out in video editing shortcuts and whatnot, totally worthless now.
You need to update
because
for that. Come on.
all different.
Mail off for a sticker set, right?
Yeah.
See, we're using Fusion, man. I guess with the same thing you're talking about in Maya, I have the same with VCarve and Aspire when I'm trying to CNC. Like I know I can do CNC work straight from Fusion, send it out, post process to our CNC. But that primacy, like that, what you've learned the first time is so instinctual to you that it's like I have to get over this like gravitational pull back to the thing that I know. And I'm like, but it would be all the reasons, just like you're saying, like it would be so much more streamlined if I just learned that last chunk. I can do everything I need to do, but it's like, but it's kind of hard in the dumbest kind of way that I'm pretty sure I can learn in about 10 minutes. It's like, but Aspire already knows how to do it. And so I'll just go back to it. And that's a cop out.
But I think we all do it though, right? I mean, we default back to whatever is the fastest method from your brain to completion, right?
Mhm.
And I don't think that's a fault of any of us, but it's sometimes I just don't want to spend the time to learn to do a thing to do a thing. I just want to do the thing, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, we were talking about 3D printers earlier when I went to MRF, the Midwest Rip Rap Festival, surrounded by 3D printers. And that was the thing that people spent so much time adjusting and tuning and adding all these things. I'm like, that's wonderful. I want to get from my brain to a thing as fast as I possibly can. And so if I have to spend time adjusting and tinkering and replacing and calibrating and all this, like that is it's a roadblock. Mm-hmm. And so that's interesting about Tinkercad because I don't remember. I thought Tinkercad was marketed to kids as and not in a bad way, not in a bad way.
It probably is.
But I mean,
that's
when
why I
started,
use it. Because I'm
well,
like, here's a platform I can get behind.
But that's fine. I mean, you got to think like if you've never done it before, you're looking at something like a child would look at it. I mean, that's not derogatory. That's just that's fact. But I mean, for a lot of people in the woodworking space go to SketchUp because that's what a lot of people on YouTube seem to use, and it's like, oh, that's cool. I can make plans, but then it's limited to what it can do. And then so now trying to gravitationally pull yourself away from SketchUp into Fusion, which I mean the capabilities are just like it's limitless to what you can do.
But it's a big jump. Like that's a big jump from SketchUp to Fusion is a huge jump. And I'm an AutoCAD guy. Like when I went to college, that was what I learned on. So I'm very comfortable in that aspect. But the way I describe Tinkercad to people is it's very very low sort of barrier to entry, but the ceiling's actually quite high on it. The program is designed for kids, right? For people to get into 3D design, but the ceiling's pretty high. It's pretty sophisticated in the type of stuff that it's able to compute and then output. Really, the limitations sort of your imagination. There are some sort of mesh limitations and how many triangles you can have in there and whatnot, but for quick prototypes, I mean, a lot of people write it off because it does look very colorful and playful for kids. But I think there's a space for that before SketchUp, if that makes sense. You don't necessarily have to go into SketchUp for that just because Matthias Wandel uses it or whatever, right? Like it looks great in the hands of somebody who's really capable, but maybe you're not there yet, right? And I think there's no shame in using a tool that kind of gets you there. So.
Yeah, and a majority of the things that you are going to make in 3D space are versions of just polygons. I mean, it's a box, it's a cube, it's a sphere, or it's just churched up versions of those things kind of smushed together. So
Right. Doesn't matter what color it is, right?
yeah, right. And I remember when I was doing that video with the soap dispenser thing, I talked about using Mesh Mixer and then importing it into Fusion, and there were a lot of comments. Or like, you can do that in Tinkercad. That people were telling me that I should have used Tinkercad for something, and I haven't, really researched how it would have been beneficial. But automatically, the variety of comments when people talking about Tinkercad, I'm like, can Tinkercad do way more than I thought it? Like, I undervalued what it was just because it had bright colored shapes.
I had this comment today about we use Corel to talk to our laser cutters at work, and there's this very strong contingent of people that demand that you use Illustrator. You must use Illustrator because it's what the industry demands, and it's the best and the best and the best. And my comment to that was, Corel Draw is so dumb that it doesn't know anything. Excuse me, anything else. It just does whatever you say it to do. And I feel the same way about Tinkercad in some ways. And my example for that was that I was trying to import, what I wanted to do is I was making a model, like a little scene, and I wanted to have a wall with a brick texture on it, not like a drag and drop texture, but like an actual physical indentation of bricks and stuff in there. And turns out that's really, really hard to do in Fusion. It takes a lot of computing power. My Fusion crashed a whole bunch. I talked to the Fusion team, and they're like, not really meant to do that. You can't really, like, you're having too many triangles.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought about it, and I found a way to finally get what I wanted on a very small scale with a limited mesh count. I figured out how to do it. And then just for fun, I brought it into Tinkercad. In 2 seconds, I was able to do it. And I feel like Tinkercad was too dumb to know that there were limitations on that. So I don't know. Like, there's something to be said for simpler software, right? Like, I was able to achieve that super fast where it took me days in Fusion otherwise. So really depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, when I first started making videos, I was gonna make an air filter for the shop, just because everybody needs an air filter if you're working in a garage or wherever. And so I wanted to make it look like a recognizer from Tron. And so in Tinkercad, I didn't want to sign up for an account. So I went to Mailinator, which is like this disposable account, and like created an account. Like, anyways, and so I went into Tinkercad and spent days like doing this recognizer and like the slots for the filters, and I like modeled the fan and the blades and like where you can fit the fan into the recognizer and all this other kind of stuff, and it looked amazing. And I'm like, yes, this is gonna be awesome. And then life happened, and a couple weeks later, I'm like, oh crap, I forgot my login. And so out there in the verse somewhere is this really cool Tron recognizer air filter system that I don't have access to, that I have to completely recreate, because I was like, oh, I don't want to create an account for this. I don't even know if I'm going to like it. So
some alien species is going to like invade Earth, and they're going to like find this file in the ether, and that's going to be like, they have to find the author in order for them to call off this invasion, and they're not going to be able to access your contact information because they have no way to get a hold of you, and you're going to be the cause of the downfall of human civilization. So thank you.
Yeah, I just feel bad that I was like, oh, it's all that work that's just gone.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
so Mike,
Tinkercad is fantastic.
Mike, you talked about writing a book. What other books have you written?
So at the same time as Dudecraft, so I write these books, and then the publisher sort of decides when they come out. And they were two different publishers that published Cut in Half, and the other book I wrote called Dudecrafts, which is, if anyone's familiar with the show Red Green, it might have been just a Canadian show, but I know some American states got it as well. It's sort of a riff on that. And if you're not familiar, Red Green was sort of a Canadian hillbilly who solved all his problems with duct tape. That might be an accurate way to describe him.
It's a funny show.
Right.
Very good.
So
yeah.
I'm talking to the right crowd of people that obviously know the show.
No, I'm from Montana, so like I'm familiar with Canadian stuff.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. So it's sort of along the same vein as that. So Dudecrafts was sort of tongue-in-cheek, pranks, stuff you can do in the shop with your kids, or your bros if you wanted to have like a bro sort of geek maker night. So some of the projects that were on that were really successful on Instructables that I had done, I remade for the book. So the head in the jar prank was a pretty big deal. The baby flask, which is a water bottle hidden inside a fake baby on a chest carrier, so you could take sips from the head of the baby, which is really, really disturbing, but also incredibly funny. My favorite projects are the ones that really polarize an audience, and that one definitely got people on both sides. Either they got the joke or they didn't. Dude Crafts also came out at the same time, but I think Cut in Half was just a little bit more on the mark of what people wanted, so it sort of got overshadowed by that one. And then I wrote 2 kids books, the Gadget Inventor's Handbook, which is electronics books for kids, and 23 Things to Do Before You're 11 and a half, which is a kids book before you're 11 and a half, for projects that you can either do by yourself or have your parent or guardian sort of do with you as well. So introductory to making as well.
Those kids books sound fun.
Yeah, they're pretty fun, and but the 23 things to do before you're 11 and a half was interesting. That was my first. I was approached by a publishing company to write that book, and very naive. I had no idea what I was sort of getting into, and I feel like I really lucked out because they paired me up with an illustrator, and I mean I can draw a little bit, but not that well, and when I gave my manuscript and these sort of stick drawings to the publisher, they gave them to the illustrator without me knowing that they were going to give these really crude illustrations. But the illustrator did a great job of sort of translating the exact drawings I had into these really awesome cartoon drawings of kids. So I feel like I really won the lottery on that one. The art direction in that book is phenomenal. So it's pretty good.
That's super cool. I think I don't know how many people, maybe in our little group where it's on a bucket list to write a book, but like to write 4 and just to know what that's like. Like I had a tiny little part in helping Bob publish his book, and I proofread it long before it got published. And I'm like, ooh, this is what it's kind of like. And then I'd sit down, and I'm like, I have no idea what I would write about.
It's a lot of work, though, right? I mean, I feel like it's just like any of the projects that we do. It's you should never do it for the money, because if you work out the amount of time that it takes, it's never really worth your while. And Wes, I don't know how much money you charge for your 200 3D printed things, but
Right.
we've done some 3D printing commissions too, and there's always snags that sort of come up, right? You can't find the filament again, or your printer breaks, or for some reason the model just is not coming out right after the 50th one, and it's things like that. And then when you look at the amount of hours you actually put into it, you're like, man, I really should have charged a lot more for this, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's one of those things. It's a feather in your cap, and I'm really proud of the work I did, and it doesn't really matter how long it took, because sort of the goal is to write the book as well. So, but we were actually talking earlier about books, and I was approached to write the first. I wrote 2 for Instructables, and then I wrote 2 that I was approached for after that. And there's a very big difference between the books that you want to write and the books that they want you to write. And so when I was approached to write a book, that's definitely books they wanted me to write. They had a lot of strong ideas about what they wanted that to be. And the title of that first book was 23 Things for a Boy to Do Before He's 11 and a half. And I pushed back on that and said, well, like these are maker books. They're gender agnostic. There's no reason to have boy in the title. And they were really sticking to that one. So I said, okay, well, that's fine. So I put a bunch of sewing projects in the book and all these like non-boy stuff in there. And they were like, okay, we can do that. And I said, okay, well, if you're going to do this, I want to write a companion book for this, for 23 Things for a Girl to Do Before She's 11 and a half. And my idea was going to put all these like woodworking and like grinding and all these like really like dirty projects in there to sort of just break down that stereotype and show them that it really wasn't, you shouldn't sort of split it up like that. And eventually we just came across, for a kid to do. But that kind of attitude and mindset is something I wasn't really prepared for. So it's interesting that, that wasn't necessarily, I'm very proud of that book and I love what I put out, but that's not necessarily the book that I would have chosen to write, if that makes sense. And I think by the time we got to Cut in Half, I had a lot more agency and and some titles behind my name where I could actually say, this is the book I want to write, and this is how I want it to look like. So takes a little bit to get there. And Bob Clagett's book, on the other hand, I mean, if you look at the ratings on that on Amazon, it's amazing, right? Like, it's done really well, but he's published that himself, and so there's something to be said for having enough of a following to self-publish rather than just sort of coming out with it on your own. So
to support your own work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough road to walk, really, right? I mean, it's fun to write a book, but it might not necessarily be the book that you would envisioned if a publishing company approaches you about it. So some food for thought.
Yeah. But it's funny you mentioned making being gender agnostic. Like, it's amazingly true, but I think the rest of the world is still not understanding that concept. Like, it's slowly kind of catching on.
Right.
When I was at William and Mary, I was interviewing for their makerspace director, and I was this panel of people that I was talking to, and this woman asked me a question, and she's like, "How are you going to market this to women?" I'm like, I don't really get what you're saying. And she was like, the women on campus need to know that, this is for them. So what programs are you going to have specifically for women? I'm like, that's not the point, to offer something specifically for women. Right. I'm like, would you be upset with me if I, as a man, came up with a list of things that I feel that women should be doing as makers? I was like, this place is completely benign. Like, you can come in here as you are to make whatever you want. That's the beauty of it. And she did not like my answer. And she kept coming back to like wearables and like things that you like, electronics projects that you could, make into fashion pieces. And I was like, again, I could not tell you to make a fashion piece or something for the kitchen. I was like, because that would be horribly misogynistic of me. I'm like, you want to make whatever you want to make. And the community and the tool, like a Jigsaw doesn't care if you, have a ponytail. Like, none of that matters.
Yeah.
And
she might have also been searching for like a hook. What hook would you use to get them in there? And then
no, she was
see the bigger
militant.
picture.
She was
okay.
Yeah, but it caught me off guard, and I was like, "What? No, like that's not the point. Like, this is a little kid's."
Your mic's cutting in and out.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Like, the point that you're making, like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is a kid's soccer team. Like,
Right.
you're all the orange team. Like, the girls and the boys are all running after the same ball. Like, it's not a thing. And it's good that you were able to finally work that out. And it's not surprising that a major company or someone who is still set in the ways of this is a boy thing or this is a girl thing, like, in the maker community, that is not a defined stereotype. It still may be in some circles, but it's completely irrelevant. That mindset is being wiped away, I think.
I think Sean was onto something on like what's the hook for this maybe possibly underrepresented group, but it really is true, right? I mean, your tool doesn't care, what you're wearing, what you look like, whatever you're interested in. I mean, I feel like the best thing we can do is make a very welcoming space so that people feel like they're welcome to come in and then ask that question: can I make a wearable? Can I make something on the bandsaw? Can I solder something? And that's the most we can really do.
Yeah, I think our groups on the surface can seem very intimidating from the outside. So I think it's almost a responsibility to make it seem as welcoming as possible, and that there aren't really any barriers of entry, or that if you want to do something different than what everybody else is doing, that it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I have a daughter. My oldest is a girl. So I have 3 kids so far, and my oldest is a girl, and she is so like me. It's not even. She is a little maker, and it is amazing. And she's like, the day after Maker Faire last year, because we do Maker Faire here in Tulsa, because I live in Oklahoma right now. And the day after Maker Faire, she's like, "When's the next Maker Faire?" I'm like, "Well, it's not for a year," but. And like constantly, she's like, "Is Maker Faire coming up?" It's like, "Yes, Maker Faire is coming up. We're still a couple months away." But she loves making, and she loves the community, and she loves watching, especially women in the community. A lot of times, because the women in the making community tend to have like pink purple hair, which my daughter's like, "That's the coolest." But it's just amazing watching her because there's no doubt in her mind that she can do all this regardless of the fact that she's a girl. And I'm trying to develop that. I'm like, yeah, you can do it. She's gonna work my booth with me at Maker Faire this year. She's like, yeah, we're gonna do Maker Faire together. I'm like, yes, we are. We're gonna put in our Zelda aprons and we're gonna work it like a team. She's like, yeah, you can be Once Upon a Workbench and I'll be Once Upon a Princess. And I'm like, you do that.
Well, she's got a great role model, Donovan. That's fantastic. What's your booth at Maker Faire?
So one of the things that I do at Maker Faire, aside from like showcasing my, builds and whatnot, and I usually have like a TV that plays my videos, and I have stuff that I sell. I do pixel art displays, and so I built these 2 foot by 2 foot frames, and then 2 years ago I cut out 1,400 1-inch by 1-inch cubes out of 2x4s. It took forever, and then I painted them, which took forever. And I had 2 of these little pixel art frames, and I printed out these reference cards for people to look at 8x8 pixel characters from like video games or movies or whatever, pop culture, all that kind of stuff. And my booth was a hit. It was awesome because it's like I always had people at the booth that wanted to like talk to me or see my stuff or do. And the pixel art frame was the draw, because I realized like going to Maker Faire in Kansas City, that's the only other Maker Faire that I've been to, is that whatever your booth is at Maker Faire, you need something for people to do. Like if you have stuff that's cool, or if you're cool or whatever, but there's not something for them to do, people will walk by and be like, well, it's cool, and they'll just keep walking. And so you need that hook, you need that draw to get them to stop to come to your booth. And so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have an interactive booth, and since I do a lot of like geeky retro stuff, I'll do pixel art. Well, 2 years ago I had 2 frames. Last year I had 4 frames around my 10 by 10 little taped off space at Maker Faire, and I was slammed the whole time. And my booth actually won Judge's Choice for 4 out of the 5 judges that came from Maker Bay, the main Maker Faire, which was really cool. And whoever the lady is that oversaw him ended up interviewing me about what I do in my booth and everything like that, and how to get people more involved in booze at a makerspace. And so this year I'm kind of doing the same thing, but adding more interactive elements to like the pixel art. And I'm developing these pixel art kits that kind of like collapse into themselves, and you fold them open, and it has a little storage container for a bunch of like little wood squares, and you can make your own pixel art. Because one of the biggest feedbacks that I had was from teachers that are like, I want this in my classroom. Because the teachers that teach like little kids, it's like, yeah, little kids can use this for like spatial reasoning and like creativity and whatnot. But the teachers for older kids were like, hey, if you put a math grid on this with the 4 quadrants, and you like break down like, hey, for C13, for C14, for D1, like do black, and you like quadrant out these colors, then they can like create a picture using math quadrants and stuff like that. So that's something I've been developing in the background, specifically for Maker Faire this year here locally.
Are you going to bring that to the Bay Area Maker Faire, or just your local one?
No, just my local one. Yeah,
That's
I didn't thought about bringing anything to Bay Area Maker Faire except my person, myself. Yeah.
Is your daughter going to make it out with you too?
No. Yeah. No, she's staying with the grandparents. It was going to be me, but then, and I made plans with Wes and everything like that, and it was all set in stone. My wife's like, I want to go. Like, okay. And so we had to like scrap all the plans and come up with new plans. I'm still going to be there. But yeah, it'll be my +1, which is good because all their wives are coming too. So maybe they can Bond? I don't know.
Right. That'll be another first. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we should get them to have their own podcast panel.
I talked to my wife about that, and she's like, I don't know if that's a good idea.
It
Because
was really
she
interesting
has
on the
no
last
show,
interest.
right?
She has
They should just
no
take over
interest
this
in
show
this
for the
world.
next time when you guys are down there.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Cool.
Yeah. So, like, with your job, I mean, there's so many questions I want to ask, but like, with your job, what is the longevity of what you do, especially at like Instructables? Because I mean, for me, I've been on Instructables for a few months, not too long, but a few months, and I was like, man, this is so cool, and a lot of the big Instructables that I see are from people that used to do it but don't do it anymore, and like what longevity is there like with what you do in Instructables and like for people that do Instructables like me?
It's a really big question. So I'm not actually with Instructables anymore. My
Fine.
old no, that's cool. My old job for them though was content creation, right? So my goal for my job there was come up with cool projects that sort of get people excited, and the goal was basically come to our community and come learn how to do this and a lot of other stuff as well. And it's sort of it's tough. I feel like there was a time in probably early 2010 to 2013 that was sort of the Wild West, and there wasn't a lot of other platforms that really did a good job of showcasing what people could do. I know that Reddit and Imgur and StumbleUpon all had their sort of sub communities or whatever they called them, but this was a place that for makers to sort of nerd out and sort of do whatever they do. So it's a good observation that a lot of the really big ones, the top Instructables were older ones, and I think that's a hallmark of that heyday. And we just have to look at stuff like YouTube in the last 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, 1 year, right? Like how many makers are there now? I think the landscape is very saturated with people that are sort of coming out of the woodwork and understanding that there is this huge community. You're not alone, that there are lots of people that are out there making stuff. So I just think there's a lot of more people out there sharing, which I actually think is a great thing. And I don't think the metric of views are important. Obviously, we all sort of want to have that, but I feel like, at least for me, when I'm using Reddit as sort of my analog for this, and I read it quite a bit, and my favorite things on Reddit are like how obscure and how deep can I go down the rabbit hole of like weird subreddits to find a vibrant community of things that I like. And I feel like that's sort of the new landscape. And I think Instructables is the same way. And I know Instructables is sort of taking their avenue a little bit different now. I think they're trying to be a little bit more into the education space with a capital E education, right? To sort of cater to teachers. How can you use lesson plans and how can you use Instructables sort of in that format? So I don't know. Like I don't know if that really answers your question, Donovan, but that's sort of from my lens how I see it.
Yeah.
You kind of already answered what I was going to ask too, in terms of you've been around this for a while. You've seen the development of the maker communities, and you kind of already commented on where we're going. Is there anything new or major changes that you kind of foresee in the next couple of years in either the maker community, the equipment we're using, the things that people make, just anything, any insight you could provide?
Yeah, there's a couple actually, and Wes can probably talk about this a little bit more than I can because he's got the K40, and you've got that sub $500 resin printer. So I think we're seeing now that desktop manufacturing, and I mean we can even talk about CNC too, right? We've got the other mill, you've got Shapeoko's got their own desktop milling machines, and these are machines that are incredibly powerful. And if anyone's actually seen the workshop at Pier 9, we have huge machines, and they're really like, wow, these are amazing. And they are amazing machines, but the envelope is so large, and you have to think about a lot of the projects that we as garage makers, and my shop is very humble, like I don't have a lot of stuff here. What is the scale of stuff that we're making? A lot of stuff is like, it's small stuff, right? Like we're not making a house, you're not making a car. So when you see a lot of this large equipment, you scale it down, it's still just as good. And so I don't know the name of the resin printer you have,
Yeah,
Wes.
anti-cubic photon. Yep.
So we've got a Formlabs 2, which
Mhm.
is a $2,000 printer. I would argue, just judging by the pictures I've seen on your Instagram, Wes, comparable results
Yeah.
for a fraction of the price. So we're seeing that now. We're seeing that with the K40. I'm looking at a laser cutter that's sub $2,000, but I'm actually going, and I think the maker community is so ripe for this. You look for stuff that's like, sure, it's from China, bad documentation, questionable materials, but who are we? We're makers. We're intuitive. We know what we're doing. What's to stop you from taking out that 40-watt tube, slapping in an 80-watt, putting in a better power supply, modifying the gantry, modifying the bed however you want, and then
Mhm.
you've got a machine that is custom to you, that you know intimately how to use it,
Sure.
and then turning that into a business. There's no reason to buy a $5,000 laser cutter if you can do the same thing with $2,000 and then spend that extra that you maybe would have budgeted, that $3,000, on material, on another tool, on something else. So
Sure.
I mean, we've seen that with FDM printers over the last 5 years, right? The cost of those have gone down so far, and now
Mhm.
I've got the Ender 3 that's under $300. I've got a CR10 here at home. I got that one for under, I think I got that for like $250 off GearBest. The thing's a monster. It works nonstop, and I think this talks about dumb machines. Like, the machine is so dumb, it doesn't know how to print or not print something. Just give it some G code, and it'll just do it. And I think that's sort of the new landscape. And on the social side of it, I think what we're seeing, and I see this backlash quite a bit on Reddit, is there's a lot of focus on people trying to build up a brand for themselves, which I think is fine. I've done it. We've all done it. But I think the market's now become pretty saturated with stuff like that, that people are savvy, and what they want is pure content. And they will judge your brand by the content that you produce. So you could have a 10-minute video, but could you have done that 10-minute video in 5 minutes or in 4 minutes? And when we look at a platform like Instructables, and Donovan, you were talking about how people are looking at your Instructable but not looking at the video, that's a very different audience, right? They're there, and Instructables is very, and as always, I think forever will be, a very text and photo heavy site. And maybe you're on the bus, maybe you're in bed, and you don't want to wake your partner or kids or whatever, so you just want to read about it. I think that's king, right? Content is really king, and that's what people want, and not necessarily the fluff that goes along with it. And I think if you provide that really good content, people see it, right? And that could be your brand. That's how I see it, anyways. I mean, there's a lot of ways to slice that cake, right? Who knows?
Yeah, I would like to
I mean-
see owner of a Glowforge cut the bottom out of their machine to laser engrave a growler.
Actually, I'm actually surprised. So the one I'm looking at
Yeah.
is the generation 1 of the full spectrum 40-watt. They've got a newer, sexier model that looks a lot like the Muse and the Dremel, the Dremel 40-watt as well. But I'm actually really surprised that I haven't seen more people cut the bottom off of their laser cutter for exactly that. There's another laser cutter company, AP Laser, and their model is that they've got a removable base, and then the gantry and everything sits on legs up top. And I think that's genius, because then you can just move it on top of anything, and
Yep.
you laser cut your hood of your car, or your growler or whatever. So I'm actually a little bit surprised that hasn't come around. So the moment I get my hands on a laser cutter, that might be
Yeah.
might be modification number 1: pass throughs, and then just drop the bed on the whole thing and see if I can get that to work.
A pass through that's bigger than 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I
Yeah.
mean, when you look at the Glowforge and stuff, I mean, they're marketing to the UL certification. They're marketing to safety.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you guys, but
They're marketing to my wife.
right,
She
safety's
wants one.
important. I'm not saying safety's not important, but
Right.
I mean,
Pinteresty kind
you know,
of, yeah.
what's the spirit of adventure without a little bit of danger, right?
Well, I think it talks. You're making the point about tools, about how not the most expensive tool may not be the best tool, or it may not be the right tool, and it's the same thing with the Glowforge. The Glowforge has a market, and it is for people that have never been into laser stuff before. They want the easiest, the simplest, like
No tinkering.
roadblocks
Yeah.
to get it to work. Has their own software, Once the software slices, you literally push the button once you've done all your work, and you just let it go. So the pass through, like it only has, I think it's like the cut bed is 9 inches by 11 or something weird, but it has like these little tiny slots that you can fit their material in,
Right.
which has a QR code, so you don't have to worry about the settings because the camera should read that QR code, detect what material it is, and automatically have the settings. Like you don't have to think about any of that stuff. It is so just, it's the opposite of dumb. It's smarter than you need to be to hit the button and just go. But there
Yeah,
are
it's
times where
great.
I'm like, I need to do a thing that, like, I want to open all of these doors
Right.
because I need to
That's
laser
excellent,
something.
right? I think there's a market for that, though. I think it's great because people get exposure to that, and then when you graduate,
Mm-hmm.
then you're ready for, the K40 to modify or whatever. And actually, Wes, I'm curious because I watched your YouTube video on sort of setting it up, and I really want to know how you've pushed the envelope on that.
Yeah, it's my next grouping of videos I want to do is like different upgrade paths you could take with it, and um, I mean so far I've added air assist to it. I've taken the bed out. I've got aluminum mesh, honeycomb mesh on underneath to as like a bed, and I've got a scissor jack lift that I'm gonna modify so you can like crank a handle on the outside of the laser and it will like raise and lower the bed. And I've seen a lot of people add like an adjustable Z axis or whatever with an actual stepper motor, but I'm more into like the manual thing to quickly adjust it, and it's a different path than I've seen a lot of other people do. What else? I've got a replacement circuit board so you can have the power controlled by the software, because as it stands now, it's just a dial where you preset the power at whatever increment, and it uses the speed of the laser, movement to adjust the intensity. Whereas with updated board, which is only like $150, you can use other software other than K40 Whisperer or the Corel stuff that kind of is shady and comes with the K40, which is not always the best stuff. You can use was it Lightburn, I think, is like one of the popular choices, and it has accessories like the cameras which emulate a lot of the Glowforge functionality. You can take footage from inside the laser. It can read things, and you can draw like with the Sharpie, and it would do all the stuff that Glowforge was like kind of pushing the envelope when they first announced all that sort of stuff. So those are the directions I'm looking to go into. So I've done some of those upgrades. Some of them are in progress, and other ones are on the drawing board, ready to come on. So still kind of dabbling with it and learning different materials, experimenting with like the porcelain stuff and the glass tiles and slate. And I already released the slate video, so I'm gonna have several different video kind of. I'm not sure if I want to do like all in one kind of. Here are all the different stone type of materials. Here's all the woods. Or I'm not sure quite how I want to do that as far as a video production standpoint. If I want to have like kind of quick videos for like a quick reference for each material, so you can jump in and jump out to see. You don't have to kind of sift through a 20-minute video to find your material in it. I think that might. I got frustrated when I was trying to learn about this from watching videos that were like that. So I'm leaning towards the quicker, easier content to find, I guess. I don't know. That's a long.
I mean, that's what the bits videos that we made. That was their
Right.
whole purpose, is to be a shorter form, like library. Like
Mhm.
it's a little pamphlet on a subject, and the ones that we've made that have kind of crossed mediums, I forget that we did a thing in that one because they
Right.
weren't so succinct to talk about that one topic. And so, I mean, they're really good because then you can link back to them. And with, I mean, YouTube wise, like with the algorithm, you're adding internal links and things, and
Mhm.
helps with SEO and stuff like that. So it's a really good idea. We do like one for like rocks or
Yeah.
wood or electronics or food or whatever else you want
Right.
to do.
Yeah, that was another thing I've been looking into, the PCB like masking stuff.
Yeah.
Where you can put the little copper piece in there and get your traces all lasered out, or the inverse of that, and etch away the remaining copper. And I was thinking of doing like little business cards like that, or I just ordered some anodized aluminum business cards from eBay for a pack of like 100 for like $10 or something like that. So I'm going to try that out in for the metal series of videos. So I've had a lot of people in that one overarching K40 video ask like, oh, can it do this? Can it do that? Can it do this? And there's a lot of people that want to laser engrave firearms with it. I'm like, no, you can't really do that. At least the metallic portions. But other people were asking for the nylon, I guess, grips and stuff, seeing if you can do the lasering for that.
You can laser a PLA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen people do that.
Didn't even think about that. Mash up the CNC machines. I like that.
That's good.
3D print and then laser it.
Yeah, man, all your robots are talking. You don't even need to be there anymore. Just add some G code so that the Lulzbot just knocks the print off the bed into the K40, into a little.
Make like a Rube Goldberg of machines. Yeah, that's a good one.
Turns on, and have a little air assist, just like eject it out of the K40.
Right, like a Doc Brown, Pee Wee Herman kind of thing going on. Yeah. I like it.
But I mean, talk about the machines.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what you need to modify. I mean, a lot of people, when they've never even been introduced to things like Donovan with Tinkercad or with me with the Glowforge, like that's my entry into this thing. And so you don't know your limitations, or you don't know when you need to take a step into that thing unless you go just like heads down crazy deep into it. And you go like, oh, well, my skills are now outrunning the thing that I'm working with. And now what else is out there? And that's when, I mean, you're caught in the maker community, hook, line, and sinker at that point.
Right. And actually, I feel like you would do yourself a disservice if you got the K40 and couldn't use it to the same potential, right? Like it's too steep of a learning curve. So there's definitely a place in the market for all of this introductory stuff.
And we made a video on how to purchase, or like if you're purchasing your first 3D printer, because we get asked all the time about the CR10 or the Ender or ANET machines. And I was like, if you go into something just because of the price point and it doesn't work, then that can possibly like put a horrible taste in your mouth for an entire like community or an entire set of skills because you had a bad experience with a machine that may not
like a CNC.
Yeah.
What's that story, Donovan?
I don't get along with CNCs. I always break them, so I stopped trying.
Well, we got our 5x5 CNC router parts machine I got last year, and that thing will break you. Like, it was scary. I went like, okay, let's jog it home, and I was expecting certain steps, like my X-Carve does, certain stepper motor increments, and the thing is, it's like a 500-pound queen-size mattress, like being thrown at you. I homed it, and it's like this massive gantry. It just like came flying toward me. I'm like, oh my god. But I mean, you talked about smaller machines in your workshop being more accessible, and there are things now that I'm making, and we have access to these huge machines. And I'm like, I don't want to put this on that huge machine because it's either so big and jarring that it may not be able to do that tiny fine little detail because it's just so massive, or it takes so much to get the thing started. And so I mean there definitely is a place for all of those tools, and I think it's really sad sometimes when we see the comments. I know when I like to make stuff videos like, oh, I could do that too if I had the $100,000 worth of machines, or like we just did a video with the Wazer because the Wazer's a desktop water jet. And they just sent us that arbitrarily. So we're like, oh, well, we were going to make this thing with regular tools out of aluminum, but I guess we can use this thing instead. But we always have to highlight, and rightly so, that like you don't have to have these machines to make this thing. These machines make it either quicker or repeatable or not as hands-on because there still is a lot of work to do up front.
So we get that a lot on the Instructable side, and I feel like when I make content, when I did make content for Instructables, I tried to make it here in my shop where the tools are very modest tools. So they're things that I bought with my own money. I don't have a lot, to spend on this kind of stuff. So they're the type of stuff that anybody would really have. But I've come to the conclusion that the people that leave those comments aren't really going to make your thing anyways, right?
No.
They're the people that are just going to hammer off a comment on, for whatever. And I love reading comments and I love having that dialogue, but I feel like that comment is just so I don't know, like you're not trying. Like, have you tried to make something? Have you tried
Mhm.
cutting something by hand? Like, it takes time. You can do it, but like, hey, I got this bandsaw here. Like, it's not a really expensive tool, but if you like it, go buy $100 bandsaw and you can do this too. So I feel like sometimes when people leave those comments, I feel like they're kind of missing the mark. And I mean, that's not news to anybody, but it's a yeah, different audience.
Well, and I think that that's a very important point for Donovan. You talk about YouTube, like they don't watch the views. You get a lot of traffic on Instructables, and I think that honestly, it is just not going to be what you want to hear, especially coming from this side of this conversation. Is that the people on YouTube are spectators, and
It's
I
very
think
true.
the people that just want to be mildly, possibly entertained are not the people that are going to like appreciate or want to replicate what it is that you're doing, which I think is a much better, it may not be as financially beneficial, but a much greater compliment to your work than you have people like that are just going to comment like, well, I can't do that because I don't have a thing. And like that doesn't show any tenacity. That doesn't show any drive. That is, if you were to meet that person in real life, they're going to be the ones that walk past your booth because they just don't care. And the stuff on YouTube, it's I feel like it is like a lazy Saturday when you're flipping through the Discovery Channel and just like the most random stuff comes on, and you're just like, well, I'm here. Why not? I'll learn about volcanoes. I don't really have an interest in volcanoes, but I'll watch it. And then YouTube is so spectator driven that I envy Instructables. I've done an Instructable before, and if I want to learn how to do something, I may seek out the people that I know are reputable on YouTube, or literally anybody on Instructables, because they have put forth the effort to spell out exactly what they're doing, and they show the images of what they're doing. So the an unrecognizable, non-confirmed Instructables account, in my mind, is more reputable than 3/4 of the YouTube audience or content creating audience. I don't know why. I can't actually pin that down, but I think it's like Mike was saying, they are more driven to show you how to do the thing, and they don't want the fluff, or they don't necessarily need the fluff. You don't need to spend a lot of time on animations or kitschy music or any of that other stuff. Not that it's bad. That it's not a bad thing. It's what is your desire to receive that content? Is just to like be mildly entertained for 6 to 10 minutes, or to actually go and do and have a real impact on somebody's life?
Writing the
Actually,
Instructables seems like. Sorry, Mike.
no, go ahead, Sean.
Say writing the Instructables. I've written a couple, only a few, but it takes a lot more thought to actually go back and reflect on. Okay, how do I make sure I write this in a way that somebody can replicate it, as opposed to pointing a camera at something and kind of like passively expecting somebody to be able to recreate that same move.
Or setting up a GoPro in a corner of your shop, and you just like build a cabinet without moving the camera, and at the
See how
very
easy
end,
it was? Yeah.
you move your microphone real far away, and you talk about all the different ways you did your dovetail. And it's like, come on, man! Like your Instructable is so much more purposeful.
I will say that I feel like the flavor of YouTube, in my eyes, and I consume a lot of YouTube, and I love watching stuff, and I feel like a lot of just speaking on the comment of oh, I could do that if I had the tools too. I kind of feel like I can't be the only one to watch YouTube videos just for inspiration. Like when I watch, I might not know how something's done, and I learned how something's done, but I'm not replicating Bob's nose soap dispenser, right? But I might take that idea and be like, okay, maybe I can remix that in a different way and use a portion of that and something from Sean's, and mash that up in my own way. And I feel like in the vein of YouTube, I feel like the flavor of YouTube videos has changed a little bit, and I feel like we haven't really hit optimal YouTube. I feel like the YouTube videos I watch now are the same YouTube videos that I watched 2 years ago. Like I haven't watched some new YouTube videos where I'm like, that's a fresh take. Like the first 2 minutes of some videos I watch are all just like this narrative that I may or may not be interested in. You're talking to an audience that I don't know who the audience is, right? Like, is the audience people that have never made something, or is the audience people that are pro makers? So I don't know. Like, I don't really know where I'm going with that, but I feel like we haven't hit peak YouTube of 2019 or 2020. Like, what's the new flavor of what that looks like? And my approach to that recently, anyways, in the last couple that I've done, have been no narration, which I think I'm taking a page out of Cut in Half, and How It's Made. I know How It's Made has narration in it, but you could arguably watch Cut in Half, How It's Made on mute, and still get content out of that, right? So it doesn't require all that stuff. And maybe that's the fluff I'm talking about, but I think that's 2020 YouTube. I don't know what that is, but I feel like there are some channels that are doing it, but I haven't seen that as like the main stage flavor, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm just talking from the sidelines here. So
my video that I'm excited about this week is a good example of something that's a different flavor than I've seen before. I'll save it, which we're probably approaching at the time, but yeah, I'll get back to that point.
Before we get to geeking out,
yes,
Mike, you mentioned different feathers in your hat. And if you're not watching the YouTube feed right now, I encourage you to do it because Mike has a super dope portrait of himself, Rembrandt style, over his shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to know who did that and how you got that done, because I am vain enough to want to hang that in my own house.
That was above my old boss's desk for a couple hours, and he was like having none of it. And so at work, I actually put it in the men's room at work. Actually, it was in the ladies' room at first, and then it got a little it was after hours, and they thought it was too weird that there was me judging people in the women's washroom. So I put it in the men's washroom, and then it was removed from that and put in the lunchroom instead. So this picture has a very sordid history, but it's a little Photoshop work of me up there too. And I tricked my wife's uncle on that. He thought that was my great grandfather. I'm like, oh yeah, he's really famous. They painted a picture of him and everything. But
did you make that?
I made that. Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing. I want one of those.
There's a tutorial. It's on instructor.
See,
you can figure out how to make your own too. It's pretty good.
perfect.
So, what are you guys geeking out about this week?
I'll start since I sort of mentioned it already. So there's this YouTube channel. It's been in existence for a couple years, and I had seen it before, but it's one of those that it's sort of off. It can be off-putting at first because I didn't really get it.
It's a great intro.
And several of my maker friends, it's a maker-related YouTube channel, and some of the people like Andy Berkey and some other people that have known about it for a while, I hold them personally responsible for not making me watch these because they are hilarious. They're inspiring. It's a completely different take than I've seen on 98% of all the YouTube stuff that I've watched in the maker community specifically. There's some philosophy in there. There's jokes. It's really well edited, and you never know what he's going to do on there. And it's called The Craftsman. Steady Crafting.
Craftsman, he's amazing.
Why did you not tell me about him before? That's what I'm saying. Everybody needs to watch this guy, and you need to get past the fact that it's a dude who you never see his face, you never see his hands because he has gloves on all the time. He uses a puppet as his on-screen persona, and he talks in like a Southern Mississippi way of speaking. And at first I thought it was a character that
what am I watching right now?
Yes.
I'm watching the channel trailer.
Dude.
But he like almost whispers.
He talks like this, and today we're going to do a photo transfer for some crazy stuff. It's going to get crazy in here. Y'all wait. And he has like mistakes on camera that he just plays off. Like he's got this dry sense of humor that he'll like drop lyrics for music or lyrics for different songs, but he'll do it in such a dry way that unless you're paying attention, you will completely miss it. But he dropped a Ace of Base reference in one of his last videos, and I was like, he did something about a sign or something, and he's like, I saw the sign, it opened up my eyes, and all this stuff, and I just like rolled laughing. It was amazing, and his YouTube community, like comment section, is like the most sincere, like. It's like a microcosm of the nicest people on the internet focused on one. Yeah, you guys have to like binge some of his stuff. It's great.
It's worth it.
It's great. I can't recommend it highly enough. And no one knows what he looks like, from what I understand. And at first I thought it was a caricature or like a character for his voice that he has on screen. But the more that I've watched it, it seems super genuine, and I'm like pretty convinced that that's how he is all the time. But you don't know. There's like a little mystery to him as well. And it's very kid friendly. That's another bonus. It's like you can watch it with, like, Samantha loves it now. And there's like 3 episodes of him reading a children's book, like ASMR kind of style. It's great because he sounds like a mixture. And he's highlighted this on several of his videos that people say he sounds like a mixture of Bob Ross and like Bobby Boucher and like all these other soft spoken like kind of like country kind of guys. But it's like super calming, and he has like philosophy mixed up in there. And like a lot of the videos end on like this positive note, like make sure you say something nice to somebody else. It could really like be the thing that turns around their day, and it's great. It's the best.
He has a 10-minute video of relaxing waves and ocean sounds for relaxation with no talking.
Yeah.
In the channel trailer, like the puppet, it looked like somebody revived Kermit the Frog's like corpse.
Yeah.
And put an orange tuft of hair on it.
You guys got to watch at least 100 of his videos. That's great. Crafts.
I'll put it in the show notes.
It's not craftsman, it's craftsman. Steady crafting. Y'all thank me later.
The channel trailer has what looks like a He-Man and/or Jesus action figure.
He's super into retro. He's into a lot of retro stuff. So yeah, he does a lot of like old school toys. He does a lot of sci-fi toys. He does. It's great. So if you're into like
the modded Nintendo Zapper,
yeah, it's awesome. Next.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm gonna do a quick plug for the other podcast, No Instructions. And because the last week's episode was about being sad, and it was not easy to make, but we got a lot of really good feedback from people that it helped them because they were in a place that, as guys, is really difficult to speak about how you feel and things, and we've got overwhelmingly positive feedback from people that it was helpful. So it was good. That was hopefully the intent, and not me just like being upset and Bob being upset, and Bob got a little teary-eyed on the podcast. So I'm building a Lego car and speaking truth. And so I recommend it as a shameless plug, and because I think that it'll help anybody in any phase of life that they're in. And I'm kind of proud of it. Out of all the silly things that we talk about, being hit in ads by Gary Sinise, making Lego Voltrons, all that craziness, this was a good one. So I think it was called Dealing with Sadness. I think that's what it's called on No Instructions podcast. Go check it out because it was pretty good.
I started listening to it today, and I had to turn it off because it was getting a little bit too real while I was on the freeway in traffic with my kids in the backseat.
Yeah, it got real.
Yeah.
So
I'll finish listening to it later.
Put your honesty hat on, go to your safe place, and feel things.
Jeez. I am geeking out about my new computer monitor. Because I had this old 30-inch, 40-point touchscreen monitor that I used to edit on, and you could do all this kind of cool. What's that Tom Cruise movie with all
Minority
Report? You could do all this kind of stuff on the monitor. I didn't even need a keyboard. It was awesome, but it's not what I needed, and so I got a 34-inch ultra wide 29:1 monitor, and it's amazing. It's like back when we went from 4x3 square box to widescreen, everybody's like, whoa. It's like that, but whoa. it's amazing because like I used to do stuff in the film industry, and I was a DP. I was a director of photography for a few years, and I know a lot about like aspect ratios and when to use what. And 21:9, it's always been like one of my favorites. It's the CinemaScope aspect ratio, which some of my favorite movies are in that aspect ratio. And it's hard to watch on some screens because you got the black bars on top. Or if you have a widescreen and you're watching like a regular movie, you got the black bars on the side. And I got this. It's huge. I got this ultra wide monitor and I put a movie on it and I'm just like, oh, like it's fantastic. I'm geeking out about this thing so bad to the point that I kind of want to do my YouTube videos in 29:1 now. Maybe just so I can enjoy them on my monitor.
Watch the Craftsman on that monitor and let me know what you think. High definition puppetry.
Yeah.
All right.
Is it for you? Usually have like a standard like desktop setup, right? With a tower. So I take my MacBook and I plug it into that monitor, and it's amazing. And then whenever I take it and I just use it as a regular MacBook, all of my desktop icons are all just like smushed and like mega crowded. And I feel like my computer and all the things on it are angry at me for putting them back in their tiny little apartment whenever it's not hooked up
Free
to
range
my-
icons, huh?
Yeah, they're super pissed at me because of they're touching. Just have to hook it back up to the monitor and they can stretch out.
29:1 is the new. I think is the future. The future of like gaming, future of movies, maybe this future of YouTube. There's a few filmmaking channels that I watch, and they've switched over to 29:1, and I'm just like, yeah, that's how to do it.
You can put the really important stuff happening in the wider parts of the screen.
Oh yeah.
So only the people that can watch it properly get to see it.
It's
That's
like
how
a
you do your,
clubhouse,
like
right?
giveaways.
And it's also really cool because it's literally like two full-size monitors in one. And so I can snap one window on one side of the screen, one window on the other side of the screen, and work like I would on two monitors, but it's one monitor. It's beautiful. So that's what I'm geeking out about.
I think I'm going to jump back to like the sentimental tone that Josh kind of started. I'm geeking out about my students. I have several students who got into Ivy League schools who weren't expecting to, and even got full rides. One of them got a filmmaking scholarship to Loyola, and another one of my students is trying to decide between Georgetown and USC. So it's a pretty big deal for a lot of these kids. And then also for my AP students who are prepping for their AP computer science tests, who are currently writing apps, which you figure 8 months ago, quite a few of them had never coded before. And now they're writing, games and apps for their AP test, and probably going to be pursuing majors in computer science next year. So I'm geeking out about that.
Great. Did they take the SATs there at your campus with someone that you know? Did they go to the special testing center?
Well, our school actually pays for the SAT, so we actually pay for every junior, or every junior and senior to take the SAT. So it was done on campus, yeah.
Mike, what are you geeking out about?
I recently ran Ethernet underneath my house into the front room to plug in my Steam Link. So I'm geeking out that I can now play Steam games. Sean knows where it's at. So now I can play Broforce from the comfort of my couch.
Oh, I love Broforce.
And not be relegated to the back cold room. So I'm playing that. I'm trying to get my wife into Firewatch, and
Firewatch is amazing.
It is amazing. So
Way too
she's
short.
not a gamer, so she's needs sort of a nice introduction into modern gaming, because her idea of gaming is Mario, which I think original Mario, NES Mario, which is fine, but there's plenty of new stuff. So we're trying to get her into that, and what became of Edith Finch as well. So a little bit more story driven. But for me, it's Broforce and Cluster Truck. I think those are games that I really like. And then on the YouTube side, just to bring it totally silly, I love really weird and offbeat stuff. So my new obsession is a YouTube channel called Knob Feel, which is not dirty. It's a guy who...
I've seen this, yeah.
You see this?
Yeah.
And all he does is touch the volume knobs, the tactile switches on amplifiers and different equipment. It's worth a watch. Don't judge it until you've watched a little knob feel, and I feel like you will be part of this campaign.
10,000 subscribers.
That sounds so bad.
It's worth it. It's totally worth it. If you need to pick me up, knob feels where it's at.
And Mike, again, back to the gaming front really quick. I also recommend The Witness. It's something that's a little bit different.
It's on my Steam wish list, so sale comes up. I'm on it.
Love that game.
So that arcade cabinet we were talking about, the Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet.
Yeah.
The whole deal, besides it being just a cool cabinet, is it has a fight stick that emulates a PS4 controller, and that's how it plays Mortal Kombat. But because we're a family-friendly channel, and we didn't want to show any graphic gameplay, we've just been playing Broforce on it. And so we have a stand-up arcade that had really done nothing but play Broforce the entire time it existed.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's a good use. It's a good use.
It was so much fun. It was like, we have to test out the speakers. And so like for 25 minutes we're playing Broforce. I think it might be too quiet. We need to try it again.
Yep.
All right. Well, we would love to hear from all of you. Go ahead and check out our website, makinggeeks.com. And on the contact page, you can send us any questions or make any suggestions for the show. And on the homepage of the site, you can listen to all of our past episodes and kind of scroll back a little bit. We have quite a few episodes to look there and look at all of our past guests, including today's Mike Warren, right there on makinggeeks.com.
We are all on social medias. You can find us in different places, but most notably, Sean can be found over at Geek Builders. I got it right. I didn't mess it up. Wes can be found at Geeks. How long have I been doing this? Oh, gosh.
You're that guy who was like crawling over the line at the marathon.
Wes can be found at Geek Smithing. Josh can be found his own stuff at the PI Workshop or his stuff with Bob, and I like to make stuff. Mike can be found at...
you can find me michaelsaurus.com. I'm on Instructables, Mikeosaurus. Find me on YouTube as well. I'll also be at Bay Area Maker Faire this year. I should be running a concrete workshop, so you can come say hi. You don't have to do the workshop. I'll have dude crafts and cut in half there. I'd just love to see you and sign a book or say hi or just nerd out about it.
Now, is that workshop set in stone, or is that?
It's good question. So I verbally agreed to it to make like a month ago, and I got the email today about it. So
Nice.
That's on my to-do list after this podcast is to figure that out. But I'll put a soft yes down for that.
Cool. I would like to thank our patrons for putting up with us today and for being our support for the show, including our top patron, C3D Prop Shop. Thank you for your support. If you'd like to help us out, head over to patreon.com/makinggeeks.
And Mike, we super thank you for hanging out with us. This was an amazing conversation.
Great, happy to be here.
We will definitely see you at Maker Faire.
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
Wes, I know you've seen Wes all tons of times every time he comes out to the pier and walks around.
It's always fun though. Love to see you guys.
Sweet. Well, everybody, if you want to hang out with us live, it's every Thursday at 9:30 Eastern Time here in the States. You can get on YouTube and you can be part of the chat. You can interact with us, and we will respond to you sometimes in real time if it's relevant to what we're talking about. And if you just like to hear us in the podcast version, that comes out every Saturday on your podcast player of choice. And from all of us to all of you, we hope you have a fantastic week. And thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Later, everybody.
See ya.
Have a good weekend.
Sweet. That was great.